feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun. Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the Cowboys.
Call this college ruled.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm Chris with my friend Dom. A couple of comics here. We're going to be back on the hardwood today. We're talking basketball. Who are we talking about?
We're going to get some Vin-Sanity going. It's Vince Carter, everybody.
That's right. Some people say he made basketball happen in Canada. Some people say he was the greatest dunker of all time. We'll see.
Thanks a lot, Vince Carter. We have to keep Canada relevant. Anyway, let's just jump right into this.
Thanks a lot, Vince Carter.
Thanks a lot. What was it? The Hangover. Yeah, it's like frowned upon, like masturbating on an airplane. Thanks a lot, Bin Laden. Anyway, Vince Carter, born January 26, 1977 in Daytona Beach, Florida. Some Florida man action. Was an excellent athlete growing up, much like pretty much everyone we talk about.
Well, it's such an interesting thing where we talk about these guys who could literally play multiple sports and could succeed on it. And that's what we say all the time is some of these guys are playing like, hey, I'm here to play. And some of these guys are like, no, I'm going to play on that next level.
Yeah, like some guys are just like, I'm better than you. And
yeah.
I know it. Globo Gym style. Vince Carter, though, went to Mainland High in Daytona Beach. Was a quarterback in football, which is kind of interesting to think of because the man turns out to be 6'6" and about 230, 240. So, like, he played quarterback, which is like you're Cam Newton before Cam Newton is a thing.
So he's quarterback for 1 year. Freshman year.
Breaks his wrist, though.
Thankfully
for basketball.
And his mama said that he has to play golf because football was too dangerous.
At least he didn't get his armband bitten off.
I'll tell you what, I got that gator's eye.
You're pretty sick, Chubbs. But bring that stuff on, man. He broken wrist, so he resorts to playing volleyball. I would love to see Vince Carter play volleyball.
Well,
only because, and we'll get into it later, that man's leaping ability must have been, oh boy.
They said, and I think their spikes or their, I forget. Kills.
Yeah.
They said he averaged over 20.
24 kills per match, yeah.
And his other teammates averaged 1. Yeah. So just to put it in perspective, he was just dominating, and he was jumping probably out of, like, it was crazy. Also, a very good saxophone player.
Yes,
so he is
saxophone.
He was literally had all these avenues to go to college, basketball being number one, volleyball being another, and then he actually got music scholarship from some...
I think Bethune-Cookman, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he was very, very accomplished man very early.
Yeah, I mean, saxophone from Bethune-Cookman. He had all these college offers for anything he wanted to do, basically. But basketball was where he shined. First 6A state title in 56 years as a senior. 1995 McDonald's All-American, 22 points, 11.4 rebounds, and 4.5 assists, 3.5 blocks. That's what I can't believe, dude.
Well,
he just dominated everything as like a small forward.
And that's what they were saying was he had his pick of colleges, and he picked one that was at that changeover period.
Yeah.
So he goes to North Carolina. He's a Tar Heel right at the end of Dean Smith's tenure.
Yeah, so in 95, 96, because he's coming into a team that's, a couple of years removed from being national champions. Jeff McInnes, Shammond Williams, Antoine Jameson's a fellow freshman who will join him in the NBA. We'll bring him up later.
Those paths crossed a couple of times.
And they have a pretty good guinea on their team named Dante Calabria. He was always a favorite of mine growing up. But
Dom loves it.
You got to root for your Paisans. 95-96, though, 18 minutes a game, 7.5 points, almost 4 rebounds. And like I said, it's a loaded team. I mean, like, they have guys, but he's playing because he's that good.
Yep.
Alongside Jameson as freshman. And then we get into they go 21-11, losing the second round to Texas Tech in the tournament. Then we get into 96-97 where they're incredible because Carter and Jameson are now in the starting lineup.
And they're the focal point. So they're on this, they're this thing that we see in college basketball where you're like, those freshmen look pretty good. I hope next year we see them make that jump of improvement. They both make that and make North Carolina I mean, one of the best teams.
And Carter's there, a big play guy. He's showing some acrobatics as far as playing above the rim that, you haven't seen since another former North Carolina player.
Well, this is when the Jordan comparisons start coming down, which everybody coming out of this era was being compared to. But like Vince
Jerry
had
Stackhouse was supposed to be the next Jordan. Yeah, I remember that.
just a bunch of guys who really weren't. But Vince kind of had that pedigree of attacking the rim.
And then he beat the Monstars.
That's right. So that's when they were saying it. But that's what I mean was the comparison was so strong with him. It was kind of accurate with Vince because he was this dunking phenom.
Yeah, they go 28-7. They're ACC tourney champs. Vince has a good year, 13 points a game, 4.5 rebounds, 2.4 assists. And they end up getting a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. And they started a nice little run during this during this season in what is Dean Smith's final season as head coach for North Carolina. They beat Fairfield, Colorado, California, and Louisville, and then they make the Final Four. And in their national semifinal game, they play a team from where, Chris?
I forget. Where do they play them from?
They're facing the Silver Fox in Arizona.
Well, it's interesting because we bring this up on our Lute Olson episode, but a lot of people felt like North Carolina was a better team, and U of A almost outguard played them.
Oh, yeah. And
so, like,
in this game, North Carolina came out like gangbusters. I mean, they were kicking the crap out of them.
And that's just not their...
Carter was dunking on everybody.
That's not their strong positions at the end of the game. Was you had Vince Carter as small forward, shooting guard, whatever he was kind of playing. Then you had Antoine as like that power forward. And when it came down to it, they ended up losing really because they didn't have a strong enough point guard.
I remember Bibby and Simon making all those 3-pointers during that comeback. And then the wheels just came off. Shammond Williams couldn't hit anything for Carolina in that game.
And it's something that happens, especially in college, where some guys just go cold and they're just like, I can't get out of this.
I would just be like, yeah, let just Vince dunk it every time we go down the floor.
That was...
But they lose 66-58 in Dean Smith's final game. But which is they probably would have beat Kentucky if you think about it. I mean, they were that good that season. But
both those teams, just a lot of people feel like sometimes the Final Four you'll have the 2 best teams going up against each other. But the fact that it was Dean Smith's last because everybody thought that this was like his championship retirement party.
Yeah, that would have been a nice little send-off for him. But 97-98, he comes back because, back in these days, guys didn't, weren't one and done. And he still needed to show that he could keep improving as a shooter. And I kind of miss those. College basketball was better. I mean, it's crappy the athletes weren't getting paid, but at least it was more entertaining to watch because guys would develop.
I was going to say you could watch them really develop instead of going to the NBA and be like, oh, yeah, I remember that guy from 3-4 years ago. And like that's really what it is these last years are happening in the NBA and we're just not really watching them. And back in the day, we used to watch Vince Carter be like, oh, I can't wait for next year. Not only did he come back, Antoine Jamison came back for their 3rd year. That's how common it was.
And I mean, these guys were probably like, hey, I still got some stuff to work on. Like, I don't want to be a first-round pick. I want to be a lottery pick.
Yeah.
So 97-98, Bill Guthridge is the new head coach. Carter improves across the board, 15.6 points a game, 5.1 rebounds. Led the team in field goal percentage with 59.1, which dunking helps a lot.
And you see this team is just improving. Everybody's getting better. And, I mean...
they win the ACC tournament again.
Back-to-back, yeah.
Number 1 seed again. They beat Navy, who doesn't have David Robinson. Which
that's it.
I'm not sure it would have helped, but they beat Charlotte, Michigan State, and UConn, and they roll into a 2nd straight Final Four. And the wheels come off again.
I remember the UConn game because UConn was supposed to be really good in that, era or whatever, and them going into the next game almost being...
You thought they were going to run through them.
I wonder if they had too much being like, nobody could take us. And it was almost too much overconfidence because nobody was taking
Well, I'll add this. They never should have been playing this team because Arizona cocked that up the week before. It would have probably been a rematch.
Yeah, which would have been interesting.
So the team we're talking about is Utah, and Utah had beat number 1 seed U of A the previous week in the Elite Eight, and Utah plays them this whole game, and they give the Tar Heels another national semifinal loss.
Well, maybe Utah was just a better team that year than anybody gives them credit for.
But I mean, they were 34-4 and ranked number 1 in the AP.
I know.
mean, they should have put this together. Come on, Tar Heels.
Yes, this should have been. I mean, to be honest, they really should have been back-to-back finals, but they're not. They had back-to-back Final Fours.
So Vince, because of how good he is, first team All-America. Made the 1998
ACC,
yeah,
first team,
and then he's going to the 1998 draft because guess what? He really has nothing more to play. I mean, after this point,
I saw an interview with him that I thought was interesting. He said there were. He was debating coming back. While he was debating coming back, Antoine Jameson declared, and he literally went, "Well, that's a no-brainer now.
I got to do this by myself."
Yes, it was such a no-brainer to be like, "Oh, Antoine declared," or like they talked to each other, and Antoine was like, "Yeah, no, I'm going," and he was just like, "Oh yeah, I should go."
Yeah,
because there was no. If you're coming back for your 4th season, it's because everybody's coming back for their 4th season.
Yeah,
so
everyone left me by myself. This is going to hurt my draft stock. So,
and then these two with the spider webs that connect each other.
Fun spider webs. So it's the 98 draft. Mind you, this is during a lockout because the NBA loves those lockouts.
Yeah.
They're both taken in the lottery, and they're both taken back-to-back. Jameson by the Toronto Raptors and Vince Carter by the Golden State Warriors at 4 and 5 overall. But something happens, Chris.
It was so weird,
and I want to talk.
I want to talk about it because the Raptors gave an explanation that I thought made even less sense. So what happened was Antoine Jameson gets picked 4 by the Raptors. Golden State picks Vince 5, and they ask both of them to stay on stage. And they're like, "Oh, do they want pictures with both of us?"
Carolina.
Because they were,
back back.
And Vince says Antoine leans over and says, "Hey, I think they traded us." And he goes, there was such a whirlwind, shit was happening. I didn't realize what he said until Stern came up and goes, "Hey guys, you need to trade your hats." Because they have the hats and then they trade the hats. And what it was the Raptors wanted Carter and the Golden State wanted Antoine. And I guess Golden State thought the Raptors were going to take Antoine and trade him to the Bucks.
Oh,
so they were like, "Hey, let's put this deal in. We'll take Carter." And literally, the Raptors were like, "Okay, we're taking Carter, and now you're going to give us Vince Carter plus cash."
Yeah,
because that's what it was.
And they were cash strapped.
Yes.
So I mean, that part makes sense. But it's like, man, that's a crazy story. And so Vince is off to the Great White North, and mind you, the Canada basketball experience, the NBA, the experiment, I should say, has not been going well. And a lot of it is due to the NBA barring those 2 franchises in Vancouver and Toronto from having the first overall pick in any draft for an extended period of time. A lot of it is the expansion teams of this era were not, given the luxuries that teams are nowadays. And during their first 3 seasons, they're 67 and 179 before Vince gets there. Their only marketable star, good old U of A's Damon Stoudemire, who goes through airport security here in Tucson with weed and aluminum foil.
Well, that's what he bought it in. He's not going to transfer it to a different
that's
thing.
not going to set the detector off.
Oh, Damon.
Thanks a lot, Bin Laden.
Luckily for the Raptors, and we see it because it's an exact example to the team that happened in Vancouver, was luckily for the Raptors, they picked up Vince Carter, who they're not going to be able to establish a winning side. They're not going to be able to establish a, Eastern Conference Final, whatever side. They have to have a guy who is...
Because Stoudemire is in Portland now getting his Sabone zone on.
Yeah, he is. But they have to have a guy who gives you more than winning, which Vince Carter was the perfect guy because he gave them excitement.
He's going to inspire future rappers and crippled children on Degrassi named Drake.
That's so true. This is literally the guy that they needed.
They need a marketable star because this is what happens in Vancouver. They have Bryant Big Country Reeves, who ends up getting hurt, and they're in Memphis by, I think, 2003.
Yeah.
They're in Vancouver less than a decade because they're crappy, but they're crappy without, like, somebody awesome to watch.
And Toronto turns it around with Carter, and that's the big thing.
And the year before, they had taken in the draft a high schooler not named Kobe Bryant, but also I think he might actually be in the Hall of Fame now. Tracy McGrady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An interesting little side. Interesting little side spider web on this one was Tracy McGrady is Vince Carter's cousin. They didn't know that until 1997.
Which is crazy. They met at a family reunion.
So the year that Tracy got drafted, they met at a family reunion. They're like, oh, shit. And then he went to the Raptors.
What do you think the odds are? Like, I'll see you in Canada Canada, motherfucker.
Well, what was crazy, and people were talking about it, if the Raptors were a good franchise, and it's not even their fault that they're not a good franchise at this time.
No.
That would have been the two stars to build around, but they literally can't build around they have to just like keep rebuilding, keep rebuilding.
Drafting because these guys are so much cheaper, and when you're dealing with the loony as opposed to the dollar at this juncture, it's not going to work.
Well, you're loony.
Yeah, so because of the lockout, as we've probably discussed on most of our basketball podcasts, they only play 50 games, but Vince Carter basically takes the entire league by storm as far as his highlight reel ability.
That's what they were saying was they weren't winning a ridiculous amount of
games.
They
were 23-27, which is an improvement. I mean, you're a 500 team after being like absolute like last place in the Eastern Conference.
Like a 300 team. But that's the thing is he was putting on these shows that were getting people to come that weren't into basketball. Because in Toronto, I don't know if people know this, they love two things, maple syrup and hockey. And for Vince Carter's credit, he brought basketball into what would be like popularity there.
Yeah, I mean, like, even though the team around him outside of McGrady is just kind of, whatever, you're coming for the show. Yeah. And you're coming to watch him just highlight reel dunks. He wins Rookie of the Year, 18.3 points a game, almost 6 rebounds and 3 assists. And things are looking up for this franchise at this moment. You got him, you got McGrady, and in 99-2000, he's an all-star for the first time, Vince is. Saving basketball in Canada, the team goes 45-37, and they make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Even though they lose to the Knicks in the first round. This is how long ago we're talking about. The Knicks are in the playoffs.
No shit, and winning.
Yeah, right. He had 25.7 points a game, almost 6 rebounds, and almost 4 assists. And also that summer, he's going to the Olympics with some highlight reel dunks. He basically drug his balls across some French center's face in this just amazing posterization.
I thought it was his explanation of that. I thought was great because he goes, I thought he stepped to the side because he went so over him. He was like, I didn't see him whatsoever. Please check out this highlight. It is like flat out what Vince Carter does to guys. And he just jumped
so mean
over this guy.
Way.
It is ridiculous. But I mean, that's how much better our professionals were at that point.
He's winning the dunk contest at the All-Star game. Like, he's literally giving people in Toronto hope that their franchise won't move.
Let's talk about this 2000 dunk contest because some say it was one of the best. And
this is some Dominique Wilkins shit.
And that's what they said was, so like if you want to put guys up there, you want to put like Dr. J, you want to put Michael, you want to put Dominique, and you see Vince in this discussion because of this one dunk contest that was just so ridiculous.
I miss that NBA so much,
dude. So in 2019, Kobe Bryant, who was alive, was asking Vince Carter to be in the dunk contest because he was just like, these kids just don't know.
Yeah, right.
And Vince was just like, yeah, I'm 40. And he was just like, I know. That's why you should show these kids
and Vince
what
was like,
the fuck.
Kobe, you don't need your helicopter license.
It was quite a discussion.
Yeah. But any hoodles.
So I'm just saying, off of that dunk contest, in Toronto they have all of this momentum, and then it kind
Calling
of
him Air Canada, Vin-Sanity, and in 2001, career high 27.6 points a game, 5.5 rebounds, almost 6 assists, and now he's an All-Star Game starter.
well, and this is where McGrady goes to the Magic.
Yeah, so this is all Vince Carter's show. Like, he's the single thing making this train run. They go 47-35. They win in the first round of the playoffs against the Knicks. So maybe we can trace all that back to then, Chris.
And then they have an epic
this series was amazing. Holy cow.
And they
get into it, dude. Yes.
Well, they talk about it and check out our Allen Iverson episode. I feel like
it's literally games being played one-on-one.
I feel like down the road we're going to be like, all right, and check out that episode. All right, now check out this one. But I'll say this: they were saying it was the Vince versus Allen Iverson show, where one game, like I think Vince had 50 points, and I feel like AI had a slightly better cast around him.
But it wasn't very. It was literally these two stars. Iverson won the MVP that year.
Yep.
But it goes 7 games.
Goes 7.
I mean, it's a neck-and-neck series, goes back and forth, and Eastern Conference semifinals, but the Raptors end up losing.
Yep.
And this is the year of Philadelphia. This is where Iverson literally puts them on his back and takes them to the finals. Mm-hmm. So you're thinking everything's coming up Vince.
Well, if you look at the way AI was playing in that, I just don't think he could have been beaten. For Vince's credit, I don't know if he's played a better playoff series.
As like at the height of his career, yes, absolutely. And I don't think we can make that argument.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But the Raptors find out that now that Vince has played 3 seasons in the league, they need to pay him to stay and save basketball. So in August 2001, he signs a 6-year extension worth $94 million. And unfortunately for Vince, his body starts to not agree with him.
It is this thing where high-flying players get these injuries and they can't
Bad knees and back. Yeah, man.
They can't sustain full seasons.
And it's sad because if you never watched him at his height, good God, was he one of the most exciting players in basketball.
Well, and we see the Raptors were too reliant on him. They start to have I think he had 40 games in the 2001-2002
season, yeah.
And it's just not necessarily fair to him because all of this is kind of being thrown on him, being like, oh, you should be playing more. And he's like, I'm injured. I don't know what to tell you guys. And this is the first time where we see his game start to change.
And not only does his game start to change, the fans start riding his ass.
Yes.
Because he's missing these games, and it's like, well, what can I do? I can't play because he misses final 22 games of the 2001-2002 season. Then in 2002-2003, he misses 43 games due to the off-season surgery that he had. Still makes the All-Star game, though, that year. It was the famous one where he gave up his starting spot to Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
20.6 points a game, 4.4 rebounds. So he's still playing well. He's still producing. He's just not in the lineup as often as you'd like him.
And the fans are just turning on him. This is something that we see, too, with early fan bases where they don't quite understand, like, our star probably won't be there every single game because he's literally the only one out there. And
taking it for granted like you're free healthcare, Canada.
Well, I heard that this is something that they were talking about when a franchise really wants to move on from a player. They felt like he signs too big of a contract. Is they start kind of bad-mouthing him, like they'll release shit like Vince out again, and it's like
they do it in that Canadian passive-aggressive way, which I fucking hate.
Well, and that really starts to turn this fan base against him. And then in 2003-04, he actually plays
73 games that year, so he only misses like 9.
The tension is high, and they aren't good that year.
Well, they have nothing around him, and despite the fact he's averaging 22.5 a game, the team misses the playoffs.
Yep.
And not only do they miss the playoffs, the front office starts to turn on him too.
Well, and then they have a full clear out of the front office. So that was what was interesting was the GM and the entire coaching staff gets fired. Mm-hmm. They bring in this new GM called Rob Babcock. Who actually was on the, I forget who rated this, but he was on the rating of the 10 worst GMs of all time. just to put it in perspective. And then they proceed to trade Vince Carter to the Nets for nothing.
Pretty much.
So they traded him for Alonzo Mourning,
who didn't even play for him because he went to Miami.
who literally doesn't play for him, signs when he's a free agent, then signs for Miami, and 2 essential nobodies with 2 second-round picks. And
First rounders, yeah.
But
Which is
late
still,
first round.
Yeah,
but,
so I mean, you're trading him for essentially 2 players in the aggregate. And while Mourning's a Hall of Famer, he never suited up for you.
No.
You literally just gave him away, and the fans were pissed.
And I saw something that said Alonzo made it clear that he wasn't signing with him. It wasn't like he pulled oh yeah, I'll sign with you. He was just like, no. When I'm a free agent, I'm signing with somebody else.
I'm going to Miami.
Yeah, we all know that Will Smith song.
We do.
But that was the thing that people were saying was Raptors kept coming out and be like, this is a rebuild. We're rebuilding. And then when you look at it, they were like, oh, that was one of the worst trades of that era.
3-4 decades worth of Padres fandom have taught me this type of depression.
Yes.
And at least you get to live in San Diego. You're not stuck in Toronto. Jesus Christ.
And this is the thing that people were saying in fucking hindsight's 420.
It is always.
This is the thing that people were saying was not only did the franchise really trade their franchise player, but they turned the fan base against him.
That's the worst part. That's what made me so mad. It's like you should be lighting bags of feces outside the front offices every day, have a feces bagged vigil.
But they bought into it and they were like, yeah, fuck Vince Carter. And
I'm not saying it was racial, but Canada, come on.
Well, it's crazy because he literally would get booed for coming back for a decade after.
Yeah, and they were merciless. It's do you realize the only reason you are getting to watch this current version of your team playing is this guy that you're mercilessly booing saved it?
Well, and that's what I just feel like they didn't have that realization of being like, oh, Vancouver's not a franchise anymore. This is literally this year where they were like, yeah, Vancouver's moving to Memphis. And we're like, oh, that could have been us. They didn't have that.
They had zero. They have absolutely zero self-awareness, but Canada. Anyway, the first game he plays in Toronto, April 15th, 2005. They're booing him. They're burning jerseys, baby bibs that say FUVC, and he drops 39 in a 101-90 win.
And a lot of people thought this Nets team was going to challenge for a title. Kidd, Richard Jefferson, Van Horn, I think, was still on it.
I think they already dealt Van Horn.
Okay.
But they had made the finals a couple years prior.
Yep.
So, I mean, and this, mind you, this is when the Eastern Conference, anybody can win. This is the era where Iverson by himself takes a team to the NBA Finals out of the East. So the 04-05 Nets, 27.5 points a game, career high 3-point percentage this year, because this is where you start seeing Vince kind of change his game up a little bit, like you said before, as far as becoming a more accurate shooter, including from beyond the arc.
Well, he's not just a slasher, and he becomes that shooting guard, small forward that, he really adjusts his game in this era and becomes, like you were saying, just a more accurate shooter, a better defender.
5.9 rebounds, 4.7 assists, but they make it to the playoffs and they're swept by the Miami Heat and a gentleman with his penis named Shaquille O'Neal.
And what I found interesting was Alonzo Mourning is on this Heat team.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those spider webs that you just look at the Toronto and you're just like, well, what were you guys thinking? And
I've seen the Padres trade Fred McGriff for the equivalent of a washing machine. This is basically that trade for the Raptors.
Who'd Milt Pappas get dealt for? I forget that one.
Lou Brock. Yeah.
But this is what I mean is
I think it was Frank Robinson.
Yeah, I think it was Frank Robinson.
Yeah. Lou Brock was Ernie Rolio. That was the one.
I'm just saying. So this is just one of those trades that go down where you're just like, okay, so the franchise had no idea what they were doing, and the Nets probably should have been better.
Yeah.
But
the next year, 05-06, they win the Atlantic Division.
Yep.
24.2 points a game, almost 6 rebounds. And then they win in the first round. And again, they lose to Shaq and his penis in the second round. That was the year the Heat won the NBA Finals. So no disrespect there. But in that year's playoffs, he averaged almost 30 a game, Vince. So, he's a different player, but he's still awesome.
That's the thing that I absolutely love is his numbers don't really deplete when he becomes a different player. It is quite an amazing
becomes more
feat.
valuable.
Yes, it is quite an amazing feat because he's not a highlight reel anymore. He's literally like your solid shooting guard that drops 30 in a playoff series. It's pretty ridiculous. And then he in this offseason, he signs a big extension.
Yeah.
And then this, I feel like, is the hallmark where he signs a big extension because he thinks this is the team that's going forward. And then the front office is just like, nah,
son.
We're not going to extend that extension to Tracy McGrady. We just don't think he's that good. You know your point guard? Yeah, your Hall of Fame point guard, we're going to trade him.
It's depressing almost. It's like, you can do all of this by yourself. It's like, come on, man.
It sucks for Vince because he's probably one of the best players probably of this era to just not go deep in the playoffs. He has one run.
Yeah, literally the one run. 06-07, over 25 a game, 4.8 assists, 6 rebounds. And then, like you said, Jason Kidd is traded. Then Jason Kidd ends up going, and it just never pans out for him.
No, the Nets just can't regain what they had, which was a viable team. So then he ends up getting traded.
He's traded the summer after the Orlando Magic make the finals and are swept by Kobe, not Shaq's penis. Traded to the Magic, and this is a team with Rafer Alston, someone you should check out our episode on, Yeah, so
he gets traded for Rafer, though.
Yeah, he gets traded for Rafer, Tony Battie, Courtney Lee, and they needed a perimeter shooter to go with Rashad Lewis, and things seem to be going well. He ends up making the playoffs with Orlando.
Well, I thought, and a lot of people thought that this was an Orlando team that was kind of going to go on because they had Dwight Howard with Vince Carter, and they had this
Jameer Nelson from St. Joseph's.
Jameer Nelson.
Yeah.
So they had a really good team, and they go all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they end up losing to the Celtics, I believe, 4-2. Hey, anything's possible. And that's the thing that we look back on was if this team could have stuck together, would they have gone on? But again, Carter at this point starts to become a journeyman.
But to his credit, this guy loves basketball so much. He's like, I don't even care that I don't start anymore. I love basketball and I love this guaranteed money.
It's the exact same thing that Dwight Howard did where they were like, I have no ego in this game. When I'm going to be a sixth man, I'll be a sixth man. When I'm a seventh, and that's what we were saying with him changing his game.
He must be the most pleasant dude ever, too, to just go everywhere also. Like, he must be just a nice person.
He's never complained about a basketball team because you get these guys being like, I don't want to play for Jew York. And just like, Jesus, Kenny Powers.
John Rocker.
I'm just saying. So, like, you have these guys having these. So, yeah, he must just be a joy. And
just a veteran, a guy who's seen it all. I mean, someone who's, superstar, gold medalist, but now he's, coming off the bench and draining threes. Like, I remember one of the playoff series, the first 40-year-old to make, like, a bunch of three-pointers in a playoff game. So he kind of bounces around.
He goes to the Suns
for a hot minute.
Lockout season.
Yeah, lockout season.
The Suns actually waive him, and I saw this, the Suns are like, we didn't want to waive him. We would have had to pay him, I believe it was $18 million, waive him and pay him like 3 or 4 or whatever it was. They were like, that was such a financial decision where we were like, no, we wanted him, but we just couldn't justify it.
And then he goes, I believe, to the Mavericks.
So he goes to the Mavericks the year after they win the championship.
The year after Jason Kidd gets his. You're rooting for this guy, though.
I know.
It's just like, come on, Air Canada. But they end up losing in the playoff. It's just, and he's never having that outside of that year in Orlando. He doesn't have that deep run.
No.
Then ends up signing with the Memphis, I think,
Yep.
for a while.
So he plays with Memphis, I believe, for 3 years and is their bench veteran. They use him correctly. That was the other thing that they understood that he was.
First 40-year-old with 6 threes in a game
there
in 2017. That's the one. Then he signs with the Kings for a while. I didn't know they still had a team. Sacramento. I'm serious, dude.
Well, the Kings signed him for actually a lot of money to just sell some jerseys, I think. Because I think they signed him for like a 1 year, $10 million.
They got uniforms and everything. It's great.
People are like, wait, what? Still here in Cleveland?
I make the league minimum.
Oh, that's such a great. And then he's on to the Hawks for a year. After 2 years, and then he retired.
And he literally just stopped playing. Like, he's not eligible for the Hall of Fame because he played into his like early 40s.
He played
40s.
22 seasons in the NBA,
which means he played in 4 different decades because you have to count that lockout season. 98-99.
Yeah.
So he's third all time in games played. Finished third all time in games played with 1,523. 16.7 points a game, 4.4 rebounds, 3.2 assists, 8-time All-Star, slam dunk champion, gold medal winner at the 2000 Olympics. And he also just saved an NBA franchise from moving that rightfully should have.
Well, I just want to.
time.
Yes, I just want to say this was Kobe Bryant was asked who he would take in like an all-time in their prime dunk contest, and he picked Vince Carter. And people were like, "What are you talking about?" And he just goes, "If you weren't there, you don't know how electric his dunks were."
Well,
like
his dunks were like Dominique in that they were powerful.
Yes.
Like Jordan had the pizzazz, and Vince had that too. But it was just like, and it wasn't angry. It was just like.
He was like an artist when he would dunk, because you're right. He put massive power, but it was almost like he grazed the rim.
Speed's the name of the game, Mac.
Thank you all.
Generating power.
Thank you all. We are the Sports Experience Podcast. Follow our YouTube channel. We're trying to get that going. Instagram. And also, we always record right here at Engle Studio for all your recording needs.
Vin-Sanity.
Vin-Sanity.